Welcome to the Madroit Podcast. We bring you bite-sized marketing and sales insights to help you level up, no matter the size of your business. Tune in and answer the big question, what does marketing actually do?
Welcome back, everyone. Jordan and Winston with you. And on this episode of the Madroit Podcast, we are breaking down how to level up your company's marketing strategy at every stage of growth. So first question here is, who is this podcast really for and what can our listeners expect?
Yeah, in our last episode, we talked about a few of these things. So we're just doing a deeper dive. So whether you're in the startup phase, growth phase, or established business phase, you need to focus on marketing efforts, and those marketing efforts need to evolve to maximize ROI, stay competitive, and reach objectives based on the growth phase that you're in.
Yeah, I think so. Our goal here is to just cover and give you guys an idea of how much you should be investing in marketing, what your priorities should be, and some of the key moves you need to make to successfully scale your marketing efforts as a whole. So just to kick us off, let's begin in the startup phase and talk through some of the characteristics of a company that's in that phase.
Yeah, absolutely. So with a grain of salt, right? Like all these things should paint a picture, but it doesn't mean it's exclusive to these things. But startup stage or phase, you have an appetite for growth, right? Trying to grow pretty aggressively, trying to establish your foothold or find your fit in the market. From a typical revenue standpoint, growth-wise, goal is typically to increase by 50, sometimes 300% year over year for revenue. Revenue range could be $0 to $1 million, sometimes up to $3 million, depending on the appetite for growth and big picture goal, right? Revenue per employee might be $50,000 to $100,000. Team size 1 to 10 people. Lean, people wearing multiple hats. Yeah.
I think too, one thing to focus on here is what's your budget for your marketing. Marketing budget is typically going to be based off your percentage of revenue. In this phase, you're going to see something like in the 10 to 25%. If you're B2C business, you're probably going to be closer to the top end of that, 20, maybe 25-ish. B2B, you might be able to slide a little bit more and get into that 10 to 15%. That's going to be heavily skewed toward content and partnerships in a lot of scenarios. Biggest focus areas I think that we want to highlight here is the product market fit. So where is your product ultimately fitting in the market? Customer acquisition, I think that's something that we're going to dive into in a little bit more detail as we make our way through, but that's a very important metric for you to be measuring. Positioning your brand is another one because we want to make sure that there's awareness around it, right? But then also we're doing a good job of finding your audience and where you're fitting in with that audience. Another one, be building initial revenue streams as well to just determine, okay, what's actually working? So how is money coming in? Is that all through referral? Is that through specific tactics that you're utilizing that are showing really nice customer acquisition costs? And then ultimately seeing that revenue number rise so that you can continue to invest. What are some of the challenges that you see with?
Yeah, this phase, limited cash flow, right? Big one. Unproven business model or like business fit or business infrastructure, right? Like how they execute something. Early stages, it could be very new. So you're getting by, do it as minimally as possible as far as like the infrastructure, software, processes, that type of thing. So you're trying to figure some of that out and streamline more of it at that time. So challenges, okay, not everything is buttoned up exactly how we need to execute, and that's okay. And then other challenges, finding scalable acquisition channels and clients.
Yeah, I think going over some of the solutions and then focus areas and challenges are all great. But if you're in the startup phase, the number one thing that you need to focus on, survival and traction. None of this happens if you don't survive. So I think that means your marketing strategy needs to really be laser focused and figuring out what works specifically for your business so you can really hone in on that. I think some of the key marketing things to focus on in this stage are really to establish a strong brand presence. You want to invest in a professional website, logo, messaging, and we want all of that to communicate the unique value that you are bringing to the market. What makes you different? What makes you unique? Win, you want to hit us with a couple of other ones?
Yeah, that brand presence, it's going to evolve over time, but having something that you can put out there, it adequately shares what you do, who you do it for. We cover this in other podcast episodes, right? But does the basics really well and ultimately helps you in the sales and awareness area. Huge. So to do that, some tactics, typically leveraging organic, like local for a lot of businesses, local SEO, doing paid advertising, right? It's a fast way to see what's working and attract people, see what's not working. And yeah, really effective in this stage. Social media, SEO, essentially driving awareness and traffic towards you, ultimately goal of sales, right? Other things, something that we see it all the time, people skip out and they talk to us. And we're like, oh, please don't skip this one. But building that email list early,
Yes.
just to capture and nurture leads for the long-term sales potential, huge. What would you add?
I first would piggyback off of you and say that first party data is what drives a lot of good business. So yes, please collect that and give people an opportunity to give you their information. Another one, content, right? Content, we said before, content is king. And it doesn't all have to be one type. If you want to make videos and you're really passionate about making videos, cool, make videos, show before and afters. Blog posts are another great way to build authority. And I think these are both really good opportunities to help position you as an industry expert, right? Build up that authority, let people understand how good you truly are at what you do. And then testing different customer acquisition channels, the ability to experiment with paid ads and things like maybe even influencer marketing or partnerships and different ways to bring in organic traffic to see what delivers the best ROI. That's where something like a blog and even some video content can have a multifaceted approach, because not only are you creating really compelling and appealing content, but you're also driving organic traffic as a result of that. That can definitely be a big helper. I'd say, just thinking through this, the biggest mistake that startups make from what we hear and experience is you're trying to do too much at once. And there's not necessarily any clear tracking or clear measurement to say this is working, this isn't working. So the ability to stick to a few core marketing strategies and measure that ROI and then refine from there, because the likelihood that you're going to find a one tactic that just suits all of your needs is not going to be the most likely thing ever. So diversify, try different things, measure the heck out of it, and then learn from what the data tells you. Those are some of the biggest things in the startup stage. Transitioning over to the second stage that we're going to highlight here is the growth stage. This can be fun and agonizing and all of the things all at once. You hit us with some characteristics of a company that's in this phase one.
Yeah. So again, not that the years matter. It's more about the appetite for growth at this stage, maybe 3 to 7 years in, right? But growth wise, like they have an appetite for it, but they also may have the ability to turn away certain clients or customers because, hey, we're not trying to survive and clawing our way at it. We're trying to scale up, trying to optimize. Revenue range might be $1 million to 10 million. Again, depends on the appetite and kind of the big picture goal in the industry. Revenue per employee, 100 to 250 grand. Team size could be 10 to 50 employees. What would you add for marketing budget?
Yeah, marketing budget here is where it gets really interesting, honestly, because I think now you've learned a little bit. You understand your market a lot more, and it gives you the tools then to make really informed decisions. So typically we're going to see that marketing budget in the 8 to 12% range. B2C is going to be, again, close to that higher end with 10 to 12. B2B probably looking in like an 8 to 10-ish range. Again, like we talked about in our last podcast, these numbers all have the ability to fluctuate up or down based on your industry and based on the conditions of your market, right? Things that could drive that up is a very high level of competition. Things that could drive that number down is something like people exiting the market. So less competition means potentially less money to be spent. Some of the big focus areas, I think, here too are scaling operations. How are we scaling? How fast are we scaling? Is revenue growth outpacing the growth of our team? How are those things interdependent on each other? And then further optimizing CAC and LTV. So we want to make sure, again, that our customer acquisition cost is something that is working really well for us, but then also it's in a manageable range. So things that are going to drive customer acquisition cost up, again, competition could certainly play a factor in there. But I think things that can help you curtail that is by diversifying your attack a little bit. Another area where you're going to be looking to add, and most likely in these cases, are the team infrastructure. Maybe this is an opportunity for you to bring on some marketing leadership to help steer the direction that you really want this to go. There's different operational positions that you want to fill within your organization. Those are things that can certainly help continue to drive your business forward. And then ultimately product development and expansion. If you're looking to expand your offering, or if it's looking to add something new to your repertoire, then you have the ability to do so in this stage and really capitalize on that. So we focused on all the positive things that you can focus on. What's some of the not so sunny objects out there, Win?
Yeah, I actually see challenge as a good thing, right? Growth wise, I do too. The challenges people typically see in this phase, managing team growth, juggling that, scaling systems and operations, the procedures, your workflow for executing in this startup stage versus now might not translate as well. Finding that and making it more scalable, definitely a challenge in this stage, and balancing profitability and reinvesting in the business.
Yep. Yeah. It's funny too, if we think about it, you say we view challenge as a positive thing. It's why it's also a focus area and a challenge, right? Is scaling systems and operations, because they truly do need to flow together, but it is something that is going to really help your business in the long run. But ultimately, it is going to be a very challenging thing that you take on. On to some of the tactics to really strategize on when we're in this growth stage. I think the ability to make those informed decisions like we talked about, but really doubling down on those. At this point, you should have identified what your high performing channels truly are. Where are your best customers coming from? Who are your best customers even? And then how do we shift our focus and marketing efforts towards those best customers and different acquisition models to bring them in at a more frequent clip, but then also to help them understand who is the right fit, who's not the right fit. And then can we automate from there, right? Can we make some automation to our marketing and sales process, implementing things like a CRM, if there's email automation that we can utilize, even things like chat bots to help just kind of streamline workflow. So maybe your team internally isn't having to do all the legwork. Maybe some of that automation can get it to the 10-yard line or the 5-yard line before they're getting in front of your sales team.
Yeah, even like before and then after, right? So someone engages, the automation huge. So typically it's a good priority in this stage, right? Then aside from that, expanding your audience, like trying to figure out who can we go after next, figuring out who might influencers be, partnerships, not necessarily social media influencers, right? But like influencers in the space, in your area, in your industry to partner with or help each other out. So improving conversion rates is a thing here, right? Because we're trying to lower the cost of client acquisition. So first of all, some people might not be looking at these numbers at all at this stage, right?
Yeah.
But they should be. So this should be a marketing priority they're focusing on, or we starting to make efforts on, but improving conversion rates, whatever that may be. So landing pages, email sequences, like closing on deals or quotes, right? And improving the conversion rate of those. And then strengthening your brand and authority, becoming a leader in your area, whatever you define that is. If you niche down, hyper focused in one specific area, or it's a bigger picture, but building that brand authority at this stage should be a priority. Probably doing it naturally, whether you consciously think about it or not, but in this stage, it's a big priority.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I think that's really well said. And again, not necessarily dependent on the amount of years, but more just your appetite and the ability to grow.
Yeah.
So that leads us to our third and final stage that we're talking about here. And with the established business, we're looking at just, again, typically ballpark number here. You've been in business for over 7 years. You're established at this point. And the things we're focusing on at this point is really maintenance and market expansion. If you've been in business for that span of time, you've likely built something very sustainable. But now I think the goal is your marketing strategy needs to shift to focus on retention and then ultimately expansion. At this stage, we're going to see companies typically reduce marketing investment. It's not to say that you're going off, but I think this is more showing an accurate representation of revenue to marketing budget. So with that, Win, what are some of the characteristics of a business that's in this stage?
Yeah. So established business stage, typical revenue growth goal year over year, 5 to 15% goal is normal, right? And 5% can be a great year for some.
Yep.
So that might be their goal mindset wise, their appetite. Years in business, 10 plus, could be less, could be 50 years, right? But they're in this stage. It's kind of the last stage, right? Revenue wise, could be 10 to 100 million plus. Again, depends heavily on the industry and the business and the goals and all that. But revenue per employee, 200 to 500,000, of course, fluctuates, but team size, 50 to thousands. Like this is an established business, right? It's more of a ship versus a speedboat, if you can look at it that way.
Yeah.
Marketing budget wise, what do you typically see?
Yeah, I think we're at this stage, we're kind of looking into that 5 to 10% range is where we're seeing a lot of companies. But again, B2C is always going to be a little bit on that higher end. So they're probably going to be closer to that 10% number. B2B often going to be lower, probably in that 5 to 7, 8-ish. But again, the focus is more for B2B is going to be more focused on brand reputation, sales support, and loyalty at this point. You're already established. Folks have a good idea of who you are. But I think now it's about, okay, how do we make sure that every single customer, client, patient that we gain is feeling that value? With that, some of the key focus areas that we're going to focus on for established business is market share, maintenance, and expansion. Those are some numbers that you're going to pay a lot of attention to because it's going to have a direct correlation to your ability to generate revenue, but then ultimately to help your business expand its footprint. A diversification or acquisition is another one that I think you're going to see a lot of companies focus on in this place because you're going to be paying a lot more attention to what market conditions are doing and how you need to adjust your plans and your models to accommodate a new market. Additionally, your reputation, right? Your brand legacy and customer loyalty, I think are something that is very important at this stage as well. Any other ones that you want to touch on, Lynn?
I think every phase you're always trying to be better with automation and just overall the efficiency of operating, right? And that touches all areas, could touch hiring, right? And marketing for hiring. How do we reduce the cost of team member acquisition as well as client, but using automation more and more in that stage. So it's definitely a priority at this stage.
Yeah. And then I'd say as we transition to some of the challenges, we're looking at bureaucracy and agility loss. To your point earlier, more of a ship than a speedboat. And to turn that ship takes a lot more time, a lot more effort, and just ultimately more people to be able to make it work. So I think that is a huge thing that you need to be prepared for, and having the right people on your team to make sure that you are prepared for that is essential. So with that, we also look at things like legacy systems and overall resistance to innovation. I've seen this with a couple of folks that we've talked to where the market's changed and they're like, this is a tactic that worked. Maybe it was 2 years ago and it's just not having the same results. Why isn't it having the same results? Things change. So everything from organic search to now you're paying attention to AI a lot more. And if you're not adapting to what the market is putting in front of you, then odds are you're going to start seeing a decline. So again, just making sure that you're up for that battle. And then succession planning or reinvention. Where are you going next? Who's taking over? If you're somebody who's been with the company for a very long time, what's the next step? Who's ultimately going to come in after you to make sure that the success that you guys have had for a long period of time is continued on and sustainable for the next generation? So then from there, what are some of the key marketing strategies for established businesses as a whole?
Yeah, typically we see a lot in investing in customer retention. So it's cheaper to keep a customer than acquire a new one, right? That's a universal truth. Focus on loyalty programs, common, re-engaging with past customers, clients, patients, and investing in customer experience, making sure it's a solid experience the whole way through. So that's normal to see at this stage. Expanding into new markets, doing market research and data analysis to identify new either regions or product lines to go after next. What would you add?
Yeah, I'd say optimizing your brand messaging is a key component of this. We need to make sure that your brand ultimately still resonates with your audience and differentiates from competitors. The things that were important to your customer 5 years ago are not necessarily going to be the same things that are important to them now. I think one of the things that I've experienced in my career is somebody may place a ton of value on a discount that you were giving them, but now they may care less about a discount and more about what your product is doing for the environment, or what does your product's reputation mean for owning one of those products. So I think that's something that I look at and say, okay, make sure that we're optimizing, make sure that we're adjusting with the times. Then refining your sales funnel. Again, I think as technology has advanced and as we as businesses need to advance with it, using advanced data analytics and AI-driven insights to improve your lead nurturing and conversion rates, understanding a customer, a client is falling off and what is keeping them engaged, and putting that in front of them so that they can continue to learn more about you, take more in from you, do the research with you, ultimately overall improves your lead quality and will improve the ability to generate more opportunities. And then brand partnerships as well. Make sure you're partnering with other companies, co-market products or services, and increase brand exposure, but ultimately feel really good about those partnerships and about what they represent, and make sure that they align with your goals and values as well, because that's essentially an extension of you being put out into the marketplace. The key for established businesses is making sure that we're staying adaptable. The market is always changing. And if you stop evolving your marketing strategy, you risk losing relevance, certainly.
This is all great. We see clients all the time, or we meet people. I can tell you a few stories from this past weekend of people I met in their companies. They're not even close to doing this, or some are doing it really well. They're investing. I think some of those people would ask, what if we're currently investing half of what you recommend at our growth stage right now in marketing? To me, I would say level up. We can't do it overnight. We're not going to let's magically spend double the amount because we just have that floating around. Maybe you do, but maybe you don't, or it just takes time and you don't want to just do it for the sake of doing it. So it has to be intentional. So it's leveling up, something we talk about all the time. Level up as you can afford to, as it makes sense to strategically, as there's goals aligned with that growth, but leveling up.
Yeah, I cannot agree more. I think that there are plenty of people that we talk to where it's, yeah, we invest like a fraction of that, or, hey, we actually invest way more than that. Are we overspending? And I think it's great to have those conversations and just go through the exercise and say, okay, at some point in that process, there's a step that they're missing, or there's something that they can at least take away and say, maybe we should incorporate that to really get a better indication of what our budget should be. So I think that's great conversations to have. And obviously, I think the more people that we talk to, the more informed we become. It is funny because one of the questions that we got, I think just a week ago, is from a good friend of ours. And it's like, all right, we've been around a while, right? We're established, but we still feel like we're in startup mode. So, and I think that's okay. Like, you're allowed to feel that way for more than the 0 to 3 years that we put it in. But I think if the goal is to ultimately advance from that startup mode to that growth phase, then let's take a good look at what's going on with your marketing strategy and how it correlates to revenue, how some of those tactics that you're getting involved in is correlating to the revenue that they're generating, because there's probably opportunity for us to dump some dead weight. But then there's also areas where it's like, yep, might really put the pedal to the metal on these specific tactics to really take advantage and generate the opportunities that you need to advance into that next stage. So overall, in the end, level up.
Absolutely. Yeah. So I do that. Like, we talk to people who mentioned feel like they're in startup phase. Actually, they're in growth phase. It just feels like it, right? And that's okay. Like, the appetite is there, and maybe they don't have all the systems or all components that, like, we're focusing on scaling operations internally and all this stuff, right? Like, they're still trying to break into a new market, which feels like a startup phase type of activity.
Yeah.
We talked to plenty of people that don't have the best idea of what stage they're in. So they're actually in a stage, of course, right? There's 3 stages. You're in one of them. But I think some just don't have the picture of where they're actually at. So taking time to evaluate that. And that's, I think, people talking with us, we get a good sense of that, of where they're currently at. And it doesn't always come down to a profits and losses sheet, right? It's all of the characteristics that make up that company and where they're currently at. And that helps us ultimately make better decisions to move forward to get them to their goal. So just an interesting thing, like some people, think I'm in startup mode. They're actually in growth phase mode, just with a few big things that they're working on.
Right. 100%. So I think with that, and I think the discussions that we had, we covered a lot of ground here. And I think that for those that listen to this, I think there's going to be questions that you have. Starting off, no question's a dumb question. And I think if you have those questions, or there's something that you just want to pick our brain about, we encourage you to certainly reach out to us. We welcome the discussion. Yes, you are in one of these stages with your business. And ultimately, talking with somebody like us about your marketing strategy can really help identify which stage you're in, but then also what you need to do, what measures you need to put in place to grow.
That's all for this episode of the Madroit Podcast. Please make sure to like and subscribe. If you have any questions that you want us to talk about on the pod or want to get in touch with us, please visit madroitmarketing.com/podcast. Thanks for listening.